All right, everybody, I'm excited today. We have an exciting guest who has a vast array of experience in the military, federal law enforcement, local law enforcement, cyber, has seen combat. He is a retired lieutenant colonel from the Marine Corps. He worked for the Department of State, and he worked for Ramsey Police Department. So he has, like I said, a vast array, and working with foreign militaries, foreign law enforcement, heads of state, and now looking at, moving into his retirement phase. But Adam Macaluso, buddy, I appreciate you being on.
Thanks, man. I appreciate you having me on, bro. This is like, I look at this as a big honor. You let me be on this. It's my first podcast. So, but I'm psyched, man. This is awesome.
First of many, because you have amazing fucking stories, and just getting to know you over the last few weeks, I'm like, I gotta have this guy on, and I appreciate you jumping on, man. I'm excited to get into it.
We're going to get you on because your stories are cool as shit too, man,
I'm slowly leaking them out, I guess. It is what it is. You start these things, you always wonder, does anybody give a shit or even want to listen? So I'm excited to see that it's still growing. So I appreciate it.
That's awesome. I was never like a big podcast guy, but when you said, hey man, you want to get on? I'm like, yeah, man. And because I was like, before you even asked me to be on, I'm like, I'm going to start listening, because I'm showing support to a buddy.
Yeah.
And so now it's cool. Now I'm on a podcast.
No, dude, I appreciate it. And, the big thing for me is, capturing people's stories and experiences. Cause again, I have experiences, but they're limited. So I'm always excited to hear, people's lives and learn new shit and hopefully put it out there for people who have no concept. But I like to start off with just I'm fascinated with the idea of what upbringing somebody has that leads them into a life of military or law enforcement service. And in your case, you did both. So can you talk a little bit about your upbringing and what that looked like?
Yeah. So it's weird. I guess, I had a pretty, I came from an upper middle class family, man. My dad is a retired doctor, grew up in a decent sized house. My mom didn't work, a brother and sister, and I'd always been fascinated with the military. I don't know. I always loved it. My dad was not in the military. No, the only person in my family that was in the military was my grandfather, who passed away before I was born. He was a doctor too, and he was in World War II. But, it's weird because my dad never tried to steer me away from it. My mom wasn't crazy about it, but my dad was my dad was all about get a good job that pays well. He didn't care if you're happy or not. He's like, get a good job that you can pay the bills with. So he was always supportive of it. My mom wasn't, but yeah. But then, my dad turned on me too. I'll get more into that in a little bit. And, my dad was really smart. My dad and my sister is really smart. So I got, my dad went to med school in Italy, went over there, not speaking the language, did med school, learned another language, and I would have never been able to do that. My brother was an okay student. My sister was a straight A student. And then there was me. I graduated high school with a 1.9 GPA.
Uh-huh.
And then I bounced around colleges and stuff. I was still immature, and I'm I was into the partying scene, in college. I just wanted to party, and that's, I didn't care about school. And, I remember it was a few years in, and I think it got to the point because my dad said with us, he says, hey, I'm paying for 4 years of school for each of you, and that's it. No more, no less. And it got to the point, and I was putzing around. And he's like, okay, here's the financial aid forms. You're going to start paying next semester, because you're not done yet. And I told you 4 years. He did that with my sister. My sister went to law school. She took out loans. She paid it all off. I mean, I lived at my parents'. I was still they didn't kick us to the curb or anything, but
Yeah.
So I like I said, I can't say oh, my parents are horrible and this is what turned me to go to the military. But I remember
no.
Yeah, and I remember hanging out and talking to girls in the bar and stuff like that, and hanging out with my buddies, and everybody's yeah, girls would be like, what do you do? I'm like, I didn't want to be I'm still in college, man. I'm still, I would be. And then I was just at the point, I'm like, you know what? I'm like, screw this, bro. I've always wanted to do it. So I remember I was I just went and I talked to, because I went in as an officer. I wasn't enlisted. So I didn't really go to a recruiter. It's an OSO, it's called. It's an
Okay.
officer selection officer for the Marine Corps. So I went to it, and, and I think I told you this, man. I was never like, I didn't play sports in high school. I went to the gym, and that's about it. I was never like in big with running or anything like that. So started getting myself in shape, and I remember when I started telling people, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to the Marine Corps. They're like, what? You're stupid, and stuff like that. So then,
Well, what made you choose the Marine Corps over all the other branches?
I don't know, man. I just always loved it. I remember the funny story. I don't think I tell many people this. I remember, because we're close in age. Remember home economics, like
Oh
in
yeah.
school?
Yep.
And we had home economics, and we had to sew like a little pillow. I sewed this little pillow, olive drab, with black lettering saying USMC on it. I was in 6th grade, and I'm just like, I guess I got caught up in the Marine Corps propaganda.
Yeah, fair
It
enough.
was the best service and everything. I guess, and just like, watching like the Sands of Iwo Jima and Full Metal Jacket and seeing movies like that. Like I always just loved, I always loved the military. I loved it. I loved camouflage. I wore growing up and everything. And I don't know. I just wanted to go to the Marine Corps. I always wanted to be a grunt. Actually, I was actually thinking, I'm like, maybe I'll try and be a pilot in
Hmm.
everything. And then I was like, nah, you know what? And when I started going, because when you go to the Marine Corps, so you go to, if you get accepted to OCS or ROTC, so there's 3 ways to be commissioned. It's through the Naval Academy, it's through Naval ROTC. Well, actually, there's more than 3 ways. Naval Academy, OCS, Naval ROTC, and then you can do ECP, Enlisted Commissioning Program, or MECEP, the Marine Corps Enlisted Commissioning Program, where you are an enlisted guy or gal, and you get selected to go to college, and your full-time job is to finish getting college, and then you can get commissioned after that.
Yep.
And one of my buddies is that, like, usually that's like shit hot Marines. And my buddy, like, is shit hot. Like, he was in the below zone for general, and I think he pulled himself out of it. He's still in. He's a full bird. And, I learned a lot from him. I'll go more into that. So then
Yeah.
you do that, and then, and I still had a semester of college. So I did OCS, which was an ass kicker. I'd never really done anything like that in my life. And it was just like, it wasn't as much as the mental mind fuck as boot camp is for the enlisted guys. They just run your ass to the ground, man.
Yeah.
It's
Shit out of you.
yeah, and then they put you in a lot of like leadership billets for like a couple days, and it's all you're doing is getting yelled at, because no matter what you do, you're still getting yelled at. Even if you do it right, you're still going to get yelled at.
Oh yeah.
So then I graduated, I got commissioned. My dad was happy, my mom didn't want. My parents supported me, they did, and I got commissioned. And at the time when I got commissioned in early February 2000. There was the Marine Corps, like the only way you could be a reserve officer in the Marine Corps is you had to come in and do active duty time and then go to the reserves. You
Okay.
couldn't do that. So, but the Marine Corps changed that like in 07, 08. And you talk to a lot of guys that I came in around that time, and we're not fans of it. It's just, it's nothing against the Marine. You learn a lot when you're active duty as an officer. You get a lot of like mentorship from like higher ups and your platoon sergeants and enlisted guys and stuff. So it's just, I wasn't a fan of it. So I went in. So then you go to this thing called the basic school,
Okay.
and that's 6 months. That's where all officers in the Marine Corps go. Even if you're a pilot, lawyer, anything, no matter what you're going to do, every Marine officer goes to the basic school, and it's
Yep.
6 months, and most people hate it, but like I had the time of my life there. And because part of the reason I had such a good time is like I had a really good staff platoon commander who was a captain at the time. He's actually a 1-star general now. I still keep in touch with him. Just an awesome officer, and a Naval Academy guy. Just like like an all-around guy, what you would think of like an awesome officer. Has treated everybody fairly, wasn't a jerk, was a stud, but like just a nice guy. And then I had a lot of like a lot of my buddies were all prior enlisted guys, and they were all prior grunts. Like my one buddy's a colonel in MARSOC. My other buddy was a colonel, a MU commander. A couple guys that were grunts that went over to be pilots because they didn't want to be a ground pounder anymore. But so you go in and you don't have an MOS. The only people that have MOSs are lawyers, and then there's air and ground contracts. So
Okay.
if you're an air contract, that means you're going to go to flight school. But if you don't pass it, they send you back to the ground side, and then, you may be, oh, I want to be a pilot. Oh, well, you're going to go be a ground supply officer now or something like that. Like some guys I knew, some guys got lucky. I knew a guy that was an F-18 pilot, and to get jets, you got to be good. He was good, but he just couldn't take the maneuvering, his inner ear. Like he couldn't do like dogfighting, ACM. So he got transitioned over to Intel. So he lucked out. But other people I know got like supply and logistics, and those were things nobody like. Some people want logistics, and one of the best officers I ever met is a guy I know I was in Central America with. He was a logistics officer. Phenomenal. The guy could supply. Like he could have supplied the Eastern Front in World War II. They would have had full ammunition and everything. That's how good he was.
Yeah, logistics is important, especially when you're moving soldiers around all over the world.
Yeah, it's huge. So you go there and you do these wish lists when you're there. Like I don't remember how many when I went. There was like 20 something MOSs you can pick from. And, and when I went, like the TBS company was like probably over 250 guys and gals. And there was like 30 infantry spots. And, this is pre 9/11 and stuff like that. And, like a lot of tough guys were like, I'm going to go infantry and stuff like that. So I was like, I don't know what I wanted to do. I really didn't know much. I loved the military, but I didn't know much. And then at first I had artillery. I wanted to do artillery because my good buddy Bill was an artillery enlisted guy as an artillery guy. Then he transitioned, became a grunt and a reconnaissance guy. And then, he became an officer. And he's like, I love artillery. If I get artillery leaving TBS, he goes, I'll be happy. But I was like, I really liked the grunt stuff. I really liked being in the woods, moving and just being miserable. And because I was actually pretty decent at it. Like I was never like, officers always was like, oh, you got to be the fastest runner and this. I was never the fastest runner, dude. I was slow as shit. But I wasn't a bitch, man. I hate to say it. Like I put my gear on and I moved, I was in pain and stuff like you just suck it up and you just move, man. You just do it.
Well, let me jump in. So you did bring up a point about the pilot stuff and then the Marine Corps stuff, but people have these dreams of doing certain things, but this shit's hard on your body, man. And sometimes you just don't have the genetic makeup to do it. Through no fault of your own. It's not, you're not a bitch or anything. It's just, hey, look, genetically, I can't do this. Like I always thought I wanted to be a pilot until I was 6'5", and I realized, yeah, they're not going to custom fit a fucking fighter jet for this big ass. Not that I ever joined the military, but you start realizing certain things are just not in the cards for you. And then the one thing I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, both my parents are Marines, so I was indoctrinated in Marine Corps ideology as well. But every Marine is a rifleman. Doesn't matter if you're, a lawyer or a doctor or whatever. If you're in the Marines, you're a rifleman. And again, I might be saying things that aren't make sense. I think the doctrines are all Navy, but whatever it is. But if you're in the Marine Corps and you wear a Marine uniform, you are a fucking rifleman.
Yeah. So we're going to get into that in a little bit.
Yeah.
So it's funny because I have a good story about that. And, so all right, we'll get to that in a second. So I'm at TBS and it's like they have this thing called O&D week, offense defense week, and it's you're getting hazed by captains, and it was miserable. It was raining and everything, but it was like we're doing war games. But I'm like, dude, I used to play this in my backyard woods. Now I'm like, I have blanks and I'm actually doing stuff and I have radios. And it's like, dude, I'm getting paid to do this.
Yeah, I'm fucking doing it.
Yeah, it was awesome. So I come back after O&D week, and it's like the middle of about like three months into TBS, maybe 4 months in. They had like 3 months. And so this is dating us, man. So we would put we would do our MOS list, military occupational specialty list, on 3x5 index cards and hand them in. So I'm like, oh, hey, it was Captain Pretty. Now he's Brigadier General Pretty at now. I'm like, Captain Pretty, I'm changing my MOS list. He's like, oh, you didn't, like, he was joking. He's like, I go, no, sir, here, I changed it. So I had artillery first originally. So I gave him a card, like from 1 to 25, just said infantry, the whole thing. He goes, okay. Okay, I get it. So
yeah, message received.
Yeah. So, and then like, I mean, it's stressful. You're like, you're like, shit, man, am I going to get it? Because, there's like certain guys in the top 10 are going to get their MOS no matter what. And then they do this 3-tier system, like it's called a quality spread. And I was in the second tier, like I said, man, I was an average person, but I got good ratings from my fellow Marines in the platoon, and I put my heart and soul into it. And day comes down, and like Lieutenant Macaluso, 0302 infantry. I'm like, yes. So, and there was people that were pissed, that people that were like by far better PTers than me and stuff like that. And there's envy and stuff like normal human emotions.
Yeah.
So I was excited, like all my buddies, Bill, Matt, all these guys all got grunts. We all there was from my platoon at TBS, 10 of us got infantry, which was pretty impressive. And then, and then after that, you have to go to infantry officers course, which was, I don't remember, it was 8 weeks, maybe 10 weeks. And it's a straight up ass kicker. So we go to that, and that was miserable. And they straight up fucking hazed us. They hazed us. And I mean, you shoot, you fight, you're literally ground fighting, boxing, like it seemed every day. They're gassing us and doing shit. I mean, I learned a lot, bro. You learn, they teach you.
Well, let me ask you this. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just want to jump in because I've heard stories, butter bars is what they call them. And they're kind of seen as, I want to say this respectfully, but I don't want to say less than, but you're like, this fucking guy. And actually, well, they don't know shit. They got, they only have butter bars because they have a degree or whatever. And now they're trying to lead us. And again, I'm not in the military. This is just stories from the inside and things like that. But I want to kind of pose this. You went from, like you said, you were, college, partying, jumping around, and now you're a lieutenant in the Marine Corps, infantry. Your job is now to lead men potentially into war, and you actually ended up doing that.
Yeah.
There needs to be some sort of respect that, hey, this dude's been through some shit too, and a respect level. Do you feel like maybe that's what that was a part of, or what's your view of that?
Yeah. It's funny. So I'm going to jump ahead really quick. So I'm going to jump ahead when I was with the State Department, diplomatic security. I'm in Iraq in 2008. Second time I'm in Iraq with the State Department, and I was on they sent agents there. It was like after that Blackwater incident in 2007. So they put DS agents, one with each Blackwater team. And now, an aside, my experience with Blackwater was all positive, man. I worked with some absolute professionals, even guys that did a 4-year hitch or like regular infantrymen in the Army and the Marine Corps, absolute professionals. So that's my experience with it. I have to say that there's yahoos everywhere. So yeah, I always like putting that out because a lot of guys I worked with were shit hot. But I remember, so I was supervising this TST, the tactical support team. So, Blackwater had the contract for State Department, and they would do all the high threat protection, like taking USAID, State Department employees, all government employees out in Baghdad, helping, work on the government. I did like FAA people, an undersecretary, people through USAID and stuff like that. But the TST teams would go out and post somewhere in Baghdad in case a motorcade got attacked. They would go try and bail it out. We were in Bearcats, and we had, 240s and I don't know if we had Mark 19s. I think, we had a lot of weaponry. It was like 12 or 15 man team. And I remember I go to assist with this other team, and there's this guy, he's a retired Army sergeant first class, which is an E7, equal to a gunnery sergeant. And the guy had been in, the guy was legit, but my God, he constantly is like, oh, I used to have to help butter bars in the Army and this and that. He's always busting balls about lieutenants. And I'm like, yeah, okay, bro, that's the Army. I know, because the Army doesn't have the basic school. They don't do like the Marine Corps does. And there was this guy, he was a former scout sniper in the Marine Corps, and his nickname was Johnny Ringo. I don't know how he got Johnny Ringo, but he was a nice guy, quiet guy. He was what you think a sniper is, bro. Just cool, calm, collective. And he's like, I forgot the guy's name that was busting my balls. He's like, yeah, this and that. And he goes, right, Johnny Ringo, you always had to take care of officers and lieutenants and stuff like that. And Johnny Ringo, like I had like said hi to him. That's it. He goes, nah, I never had that problem in the Marine Corps. He goes, all the officers I ever had knew what they were doing. They were good. He goes, maybe that's the Army, but not the Marine Corps. And that shut the dude up. I remember that. And that made me so happy.
Good.
So, but you're right. So you go through infantry officers course and you know a shit ton of tactically, but you know nothing administratively in the Marine Corps. And you know from your background and stuff, paperwork makes the dream work.
Yes, it does.
So, like you don't know anything, but part of it is like I also learned how to be a Marine from like a lot of my enlisted buddies. That guys that they were officers, but they were prior enlisted. I learned how to be a Marine. And the one thing I always learned was like, just to treat them like Marines, man. And treat them like nice people, treat them like people, how I wanted to be treated. And I think that made me money. Like I got along with when I got to my first battalion. I was like, I like treating guys like I didn't have anything to prove.
Yeah.
Like I like to say, like I went through infantry officers course. I had my rib broken, man. I got it broken boxing, and then we did ground fighting, and the guy threw me, and I had all my gear on. I landed on my canteen, and he's like, "Uh-oh," because I was like, "Oh," because he heard it crack.
Mm-hmm.
And I sucked it up. It hurt like hell, man. And I mean, there was times I wanted to just cry, but I'm like, I'm not redoing this course.
Yeah.
Oh, and I always like to tell this story. So when you get the infantry officers course, there's the combat endurance test. It's like, is it common? There's an INDOC. You have to take this test the first day. It's a physical test. And when I went, this is pre 9/11, before the height of Iraq. They say if you fail it, you come in every Saturday till you pass it. And I'm like, I'm not failing this thing.
Yeah.
I go, and you have to ground fight in it. You have to land nav. You have to like run. You're in your gear the whole time, like 00 courses, like more than once. And they at the end of the day, you get there and you get to the classroom, and they're like, all right, these names, and they start listing names, and they're like Macaluso. They're like, all right, everybody that we just listed, you guys passed it. Everybody else, next Saturday, you got to come here. And I was like, yes. And I remember, and there was dudes there that were PT studs, man, that like 300, and they didn't pass it. I was like, damn. So, that always should prove to me, like, all right, man, you just have heart, and you just put into it, and you can do it. And, I hate to say it, like, I don't act like I'm the toughest dude in the world, but and Tyler, it's like, don't be a bitch, man. Like,
yeah,
like that's really the thing. Just don't be a bitch.
I've talked about this on some other episodes. Again, I'm not prior military or anything like that, but law enforcement wise, and I've talked about it. The biggest stress for me was always these like PT, like you have to pass these things, and it's graded on standards. Somebody else is watching you, and I enjoy working out. And I've had many agencies I worked for where, again, I was never a PT stud as far as testing goes, but then we would do, group fitness, group workouts, whatever. And they're like, and several instructors are like, man, I don't understand. Like you crush it in the gym, like your energy, you're fucking happy, you're hype. We love the fucking energy. And then we get to like test day where you got to, do the test. And what happened? I was like, I don't know. I just don't like this part of it. It's like, yeah, dude, you just got to like push through, and it sucks, and I hate it. But like, yeah.
Psychological thing, man. It's like you're being graded, and like you're like, damn, like, and you're like, damn, like someone like you, like I know I can slug a lot of weight up and stuff like that, but like how some of these places are like, oh, you're slow, you can't run, so that means you're a piece of shit. No, man, I had Marines that were slow, and they were some of the best Marines I've ever seen. Just because someone can run doesn't make them like the be all end all of something.
Dude, you're preaching my language. Again, I'm not knocking people who like to run or want to run or are great at running. I'm just saying that you need both sides. You need someone to be able to go catch the guy, and then you need that guy that could rip the dude's fucking arm off. You need both.
Exactly. So I remember, so when I got out to the fleet, I had this company commander, man, and he was a machine. I watched him do 37 dead hang pull-ups. Perfect. So
Jeez.
30, and the last two were the only ones he shaked on. You know, always at 300, 300 is a perfect PFT. Always at 300. And I was his executive officer. And he never gave me shit that but he knew I would go at lunch, I would go swim. Like when he hiked, like I was there, like, you know, like he knew I could hang.
Yeah.
But it was always hard to get a read on him. But I remember he promoted this kid to corporal that wasn't like the embodiment of fitness, like which you would like. He didn't even look like what you would think of a Marine, but he was a good kid.
Yeah.
And I said to him, I said, "Hey, sir, how come you promote?" Like, I'm not saying. He goes, I always thought like you were big with like, you want guys that are like, high first class PFTs. He goes, you know why I promoted him? Because I've come in on a couple Saturdays to do paperwork and stuff. And, I've seen him running the ridge, knocking pull-ups up. And he goes, that's all I want. I just want someone to put the effort in, you know, that's it. And that's a big thing in the Marine Corps. I mean, there's guys that like, oh, you suck because you can't run a sub 18, but there's also guys like, okay, all right, man, you didn't quit. You crawled across the finish line, but you did it.
Yeah. You puked after you got through it, but you fucking finished it.
Yeah.
Well, I want to be respectful of your time, but I definitely got to get into wartime because, again, once again, here you are, right? College kid or whatever, floating around, get in the military. You're now leading men, and then boom, wartime happens. So now shit is real. You're not just a practice hero. Now you're fucking doing it for real.
Yeah, I was in Okinawa when 9/11 hit. We were deployed, and we're like, we're going to fucking war. Everybody's like, we're going to Afghanistan. We're going to Afghanistan. We get back and it's like, it's in the tea leaves, man. You're going to Iraq. We trained like it was going out of style. We blasted through, and that summer we blasted through like 2 or 3 years of our battalion's ammo allocation in like a month and a half. And, and we're getting closer. I remember, and it's like, it's December, like we know we're going somewhere. And, they're like the packing list come out and they're like, have your stuff packed. And so I remember we're sitting there and they're like, okay. They're like, we're leaving. We're leaving tonight. We're going to March Air Force Base and we're going to fly out. And I'm like, holy shit, man, this is fucking real.
Yeah.
And, and we've been doing all these briefs, like the Iraqi Army capabilities and, like all this training to recognize their stuff. And so we're like, we get on the plane, we fly to Kuwait, and then we get to Kuwait at the end of January. And like, there was no ifs, ands, or buts. We knew that like diplomacy was not going to work. We knew that our administration at the time wanted to fucking roll in there. And, so, we're getting ready and I'm like, man, I had, including myself, 57 guys when we crossed the border. And it's nerve wracking, man. And to add to it, there was a big chemical threat. So we're in MOP suits, which is like the chemical suits.
Mm-hmm.
So that was like the biggest thing. In the radios, we had these, what is it, 119s, man? Like, geez, I'm getting old.
The big ones, right?
Yeah, the bigger ones. And,
the big heavy ones.
And it would beep with the encryption. And I was always paranoid, going beep and going gas, gas, gas. I was nervous. I'm not going to lie. Like if it was like, we're like contact front or something like that. Okay. That's like your training kicks in.
Yeah.
And that was always my paranoid thing. But like getting into combat, I remember like we rolled across the border and, I remember, I see the black smoke and I'm like, holy shit, bro, this is like those videos from the first Gulf War. Yeah. And then this is me, and then there's like a bunch of T-55s burning on the side of the road. I remember that there was one, and I wish I took a picture of this, but I guess I didn't. I don't know if I was scared or whatever, but I remember we're going by this, we going across the border, literally we cross across the border, and an Abrams had hit, one of our tanks had hit a tank mine, and its track was fucked up, so they were fixing it. But I remember these ladies were carrying this Iraqi kid, and they tripped, and his insides just spilled out. He was dead. I'm like, oh shit. I'm like, this is real, dude. This is real. And we go and make a right to where we're going, and we're in Amtrak's, And I remember we're passing. It was on the left. This T-55 tank, and it's burning, and it's this black smoke, like it was like Soviet tanks and stuff like that. They burned really. They were like flame hazards and stuff. And I remember this tank's burning, and in the TC, the turret commander, his hatch, there's a fucking skeleton sitting there. Like he must have been fucking killed instantly, because he still looked like, you see in the movies where like the tank commander is standing out, and it's this, and maybe it's been diluted in my mind over this, but from what I remember, man, it was the blackest smoke, and that skeleton was as white as could be. I remember, and I'm like, holy shit, this is real. But we go and we do our first mission and all this stuff, but I remember, I don't think it was until I don't remember exactly the first time, like actually pulling the trigger, but I remember I was in the TC, and we're getting engaged by Iraqi army regulars, not Republican guards or something. And I remember I'm like fucking, my hand's shaking. I'm like, fuck, I'm scared, man. And
rightfully so, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. And every Marine is. Everybody's scared. If someone says they're not scared, they're lying. I mean, I talked to Delta guys, and they said, yeah, everybody's nervous. You keep it in check, man. That's how you do it,
Yeah.
And I remember my hand's shaking, my left hand, I'm right-handed, and I'm like, fuck, I can't. I'm trying to engage these guys from the Amtrak, so I slapped it on the metal. I'm like, fuck, stop. And I like, okay. And then I went back and like started engaging targets and shit like that. And like, because the training kicks in, like everything kicks in. But yeah, it was like, combat is like, and I'm the first to admit it, man. I mean, I got buddies that saw a shit ton more combat than I ever did. I mean, like literally up close and personal. Like in Iraq and in Afghanistan. And so, I mean, I saw combat, I was in it, but nothing to like a lot of my buddies, like, and it's funny because I still feel guilty to this day that I didn't see like as much as them, like, because when I was like out, I was a cop, and that's when I volunteered to go to Afghanistan. And I remember one of my buddies, he's like, what do you do, man? You already did your time. I feel guilty, bro. I mean, other guys are going, like, I mean, I should go. He's like, you did your time though. I'm like, yeah, but like, I'm still able. I'm still a Marine. I want to do it. So it was like, that was like my thing was like, I remember because, I make no illusions. I go to the VA. I talk to the psychiatrist and stuff. And I remember one of the things I always talked about was like I feel guilty that I always wish to engage more targets and it was in more combat. But then I'm like, well, I never got shot or get killed. And then I didn't lose any guys under my command. And that's a big thing.
Yeah.
Like, I know buddies that lost guys, and, I mean, everybody knows you join the Marine Corps, you want to go fight, you want to fucking go kill bad guys. Yeah, that's what officer enlisted. That's what guys want to do, man. They want to do that, but it's still like losing guys. It's like, so I remember, so I was cross-decked to it. Like I was like a senior lieutenant in my battalion, and then another battalion, I got cross-decked over to go with another lieutenant because we had too many lieutenants. And I remember I went to the battalion commander. I'm like, this is bullshit. He goes like, Mac, I tried to fight it. Like, you're not a shitbag. We know that, So, my battalion commander walked me down to that battalion before we, go in there and then go into Iraq.
Yeah.
And I still keep in touch with him to this day. Shit, but now I completely forgot what I was just going to say. This is my old age catching up.
It's all right, man. Well, let's go. Do you got it or?
No, go. It'll come back, man.
That's all right. Cause I know, because your career, it's not convoluted, but it's impressive. Because like you said, you had already done your time, but you were on reserve status, and you were a cop. But let's kind of backtrack a little bit. So after the Marine Corps, was it Department of State or PD? Like, how did that flow?
So I was like, I always wanted to be a cop too, growing up, and I always wanted to have military and then go be a cop. Okay. So I started applying to like all the federal agencies. So I was living in Arlington at the time. I was still on active duty and I got sent to the Pentagon. That's part of the reason I left active duty. But that place is like soul sucking.
Yeah.
So I always wanted to go to DS. I always like DS sounds so freaking cool and this and that. And I was happy that I got it, man. I got it. I got in the first shot because, man, you went through the whole federal hiring process. It's a crapshoot.
Yeah.
Like some people get it the first shot. Some people have to take like 3-4 times, but they get it. It's whatever the way the freaking wind is blowing that day. So I was excited. I timed it perfectly. I got to DS. I was coming off active duty. I was on terminal leave and I started. And, I go to FLETC and then do the basic special agent training. And I wanted to stay in DC because I had met my now wife at the time and she was a teacher down there. But the guy who did assignments was from the town next to me up in Jersey. He's like, I hooked you up. I'm like, you kind of didn't hook me up.
You kind of fucked me.
Yeah. So I got sent to the New York field office, which is in Fort Lee, New Jersey. But it was cool. It was a lot of protection, which, I mean, you know a lot more about protection than me. But with DS, what was cool, man, is that they're truly a global law enforcement agency because there's RSOs and the regional security officers in every embassy. And you could do these like TDYs to like Iraq and Afghanistan and stuff like that. So at the time, our SAC at the office was only letting guys go to high threat training that were former military or cops because he was a former Marine in, I think, the early 80s. So, I put in and I got it. So the State Department at the time had this awesome high threat training program. It's like drinking from a fire hose. And like if you were in the military, you were okay. But if you never did law enforcement or anything, it's like, holy shit. Like you're shooting, they had 2 former Delta guys running the training. They had a former Green Beret, an 18 Delta who was a medic. And it was also a SEER instructor. I mean, these guys were like, you think of like professional. These guys like wrote the book on it.
Yeah.
Like the nicest dudes, man. The one of the Delta guys was like, he was I mean, this dude's a stud, and he's like, all right, hey, I'm going to work on some stuff with you, and you could talk to him about. He just wanted to help you. He just wanted to train you. And they had a lot of the firearms guys are all former Marines, former snipers, and stuff. So they train you up really good.
Well, that's what you want, especially if you're going into a high threat area.
Yeah.
Sorry, let me jump in real quick. A lot of people don't know what the Department of State, like what you did, because they only hear about it on the news or, politics or whatever, like, Rubio's going around, trying to make deals in wartime and stuff. They don't understand what the Department of State encompasses. So, like, what all do they do and what did you do?
So diplomatic security, we like the criminal aspect of the investigation stateside is passport and visa fraud, and then protection of foreign dignitaries below the head of state. Like, Secret Service gets all like the presidents and heads. We would get like the foreign ministers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So we did a lot of that. A lot of, how it is, bro. A lot of it's smoke and mirrors. Like some of these, I'm like, why are we guarding this person?
The Minister of Corn.
Yeah, exactly. And then I told you about the story about the one lady. She was a prosecutor in Italy, and the mafia had death threats on her, and she did war crimes prosecution in Serbia and stuff like that. And they give her like 2 agents. I'm like, come on, bro. This is this is like legit. But they do they are like the chief law enforcement agent officer. They do the security for the embassies overseas, and they do like liaisons with the host nation police, and they work with like the FBI, DEA when they have people in those offices. They do a lot with like getting criminals extradition and stuff like that.
Yeah,
and they do a lot of protection overseas, especially like in like Iraq, Afghanistan. Like remember, this is like the 07, 08 time frame.
Yep,
Pakistan stuff like that. So like. I'm like, dude, I'm like, I'll go do it. I mean, I was a Marine. I'll go freaking slug through downtown Baghdad, which is, now I look back at it, like, I'm like, holy shit, man. I didn't have any flame resistant stuff on. And like, I'm like, you're in armored vehicles, but like the DOD wouldn't even let their people go in state vehicles because it wasn't up to standard,
Yeah,
So it was like,
yeah.
Like an IED would have just vaporized anything. But we did,
people don't think about that.
Yeah, but we did high threat protection over in Baghdad. In country in Iraq. So like I remember I had a undersecretary for near Eastern affairs. I took him up to like Mosul, we were like in Huey's and like took him to Basra. Like I guarded him. I was the agent in charge for that. Like we had a Blackwater team, and that Blackwater team was shit hot. The shift leader, the second in command was a 22-year veteran of SEALs, and the dude had like his clothes were immaculate, pressed every day. Like he was legit. The other guy was like a former Green Beret who was like, he had the beard, but like, dude, he was like professional. Like the sniper I had was a former Marine Corps scout sniper, and he was like, he looked like the typical like Marine, tatted up and everything, but he was like, he would still like call me sir. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? He goes, well, we're equal. I'm Adam. I forgot what his name was, but I'm like, shut the fuck up and call me. Like, he's like, all right, because he was like,
Yeah.
like still amazingly professional. And so I did a lot. That was fun, man. I loved doing the high threat protection. I got a SIG, I got an M4. People would think we were like Blackwater and stuff like that. I'm like, no, I'm a special agent with the United States government, man.
Yeah.
And that was awesome. The reason I left DS was, so, my wife, we came up here, she got a job teaching. At the time, it was tough getting a job in Jersey teaching. And I felt guilty. Like, I'm like, is this fair that I'm going to drag my wife all over the world? She'd already been teaching like 6 or 7 years at this time. She had has a master's degree. And I'm like, it's kind of unfair. So I'm like, all right, well, I'll just become a cop, and I always wanted to do that. So.
Oh, no. And I love it. Before we get on the cop section, you told me a story about, I can't remember if it was Iraq or Iran, but you were in an embassy or something, and there was a minister or an official, and the guards were being real squirrely. Yeah, what was that story? I love that story.
So that was the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Baghdad. Okay. So at the time I forgot his name, but he was a Kurd foreign minister, and I had guarded him like a bunch in New York City a few times, and he was like a very nice guy. Like he fought Saddam in the 80s. During the Iran-Iraq war, he was up in northern Iraq fighting and against Saddam's army. Big dude, but like he was a warrior back then. I mean,
yeah.
Now he looked like just a warrior at the buffet table. But listen,
warrior.
Yeah, I'd give him an AK back in the day, and I think he's since passed. But he was a nice guy. So I'm guarding this undersecretary for Near Eastern Affairs, who was Lawrence Butler. Amazing guy, man. Amazing. Just like utmost professional. And like, I would like you like most people, you're like, are you going to take a bullet for them? Yeah, sure. Wink, wink. This guy would like make sure he's getting out of the X, and I'll take a round for him to get him home safe, because that's how good of a guy he was.
Yeah.
So he's going to have a meeting with the foreign minister. So we get there, and it's me and Mike, the shift leader, and I got armor, I got like a shirt on, and I got my SIG and some magazines. I don't have my chest rig and my M4 and all that stuff. So we go up there, and these Iraqi like security guys, they all come out, they're in their European type suits, and they all got AKs with their airborne folding stocks on them, and they're like mean mugging us. I'm like, okay. And, they're not talking to us and everything like that. And we get up there, and they're like, wait here. So I'm there, and, I'm right by the Ambassador Butler, and they're like, and all of a sudden more security guys come, and then the foreign minister comes out. Yeah. Like I said, these guys are mean mugging us. They're not talking to us. They're being respectful to Ambassador Butler, but like me and Mike, they're like, oh yeah, whatever. Okay. and foreign minister comes walking by, and he looks at me, and his face lights up, and he comes over and gives me this big bear hug. And he said I asked how I was doing and stuff like that, and then went in the room. I look over, and all these Iraqis, man, all these dudes that were like, trying to act all tough, they all have this like astonished look. They're like, how do you know him? I'm like, I guarded him in New York City a number of times, and they were like, oh. After that, we were like the princes there. They're like, oh, they bringing us food and tea,
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, this is great. Like, it was the funniest thing because and it was just like, 1 minute they're like ready to skin like behead us and we're going to be on a video on gore.com. And then the next minute we're hanging out partying. And they're like, here's my daughter, marry her and stuff like
Oh,
that.
geez.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was good. And, because then like some of his other staff came out and they're like, oh, Adam, what are you doing here? They're like, last time I saw you, it was New York City. I'm like, well, I'm in the State Department. I said, I do travel. And
Yeah. I do travel a little bit.
yeah. So
Well,
that was good.
yeah, let me touch on that too because we glossed over it. But so again, Department of State time, but also military time. Again, we talked about a little bit, but you worked alongside foreign military groups and foreign law enforcement, and we kind of touched on it. Like, not foreign law enforcement. People have this in the United States. When I say people, it's not like our law enforcement, or at least it's not always like that. And we talked about it at length, over training and stuff. But could you touch on that a little bit, and what that was like, and what impression you had on that?
So, I mean, like law enforcement wise, I worked with like whatever the Iraqi police were at the time after the invasion. And, people bitch and moan in the United States, but like, dude, these other countries, like the Iraqis, like, that's all. So perfect story. So we're doing a payout in on the Jeff in southern Iraq around in May or June. I think it was May. I don't remember exactly. And it was for these Iran-Iraq war veterans. Okay. That was a pretty brutal war. So, but they had like different banks and they were lined up male, female and stuff like that. There was like 7 or 8 lines and I told I told Gus, our translator, I said to the Iraqi guy doing, I go, don't make announcements. Gus is going to do them so we can keep it. Everything's going good. Then he makes an announcement and everybody charges. And I'm like, Jesus Christ. And it starts to stampede. And like, we had to close it down and stuff. And I said to Gus, I go, Gus, how would this have been taken care of during Saddam's day? He goes, oh, there'd be 1, maybe 2 cops down here. I'm like, are you kidding me? He goes, oh yeah. What they would have done was like the first time somebody got out of line, they would have just shot somebody in the head and that's it. And then everybody would have went right back into it, back in line. So like, yeah, people bitch and moan about the police in the United States, but like, and they're like, oh, they're out there, they're shooting everybody. I'm like, I mean, this is Gus telling me the story. This is how the Iraqi police, they beat people. Like I watched them like beat people in front of us, like to get in line. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
And the Afghan police, forget about it. I mean, they were just like complete fucking buffoons.
Yeah.
Complete buffoons. They were high all the time, either pot or probably opium or something like that. And it's just like, now foreign militaries, like I was in combat with the Brits and, the Brits are shit hot, man.
Yeah.
They know how to fight. Like people badmouth them, but like, like our special forces are based off Delta's based off the SAS.
Yeah.
Like the Brits are like, they can fight, man. And they are a professional army. And I was in Iraq with a lot of Afghanistan with a lot of other NATO countries. And, they're like, most of those militaries are a little more laid back than us, but they're good, man. Maybe they don't have, like, they grow beards, some of them and stuff like that. And the Brits like walk around with towels going, because, for some reason, if people show skin in the United States, they're like, oh my God, but the Brits like Western European militaries, man, they were good. I mean, the Brits, the Danish. I remember I was hanging out with some Australian SAS guys that were like, I'm like, bro, you guys are fucking amazing. He goes, nah, dude, we're just like you. I'm like, yeah, okay. Just like, the Australian military is just like, those are professional militaries. I did stuff with the Koreans, the ROK Marine Corps, and hardest people I've ever met. Would I want to go into combat with them? I'm not really sure.
Fair enough.
I want them on our side. So they beat their people like it's going out of style. they're very professional, but like they're big with their like discipline and grooming standards. Like they're like maneuvers and like I wasn't too impressed with it really to say like when they like definitely like you know, I'm biased because I was a Marine. Like our guys were better. They were good, man. They were good.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, man. They were good, but like they they you read stories if you ever get a chance about the ROK Marine Corps in Vietnam, man, during the Vietnam War. Like it was well known the NVA and the VC not to met with the ROK Marine Corps. But then again, it's like, you know, they would if they took rounds from a village, they would just go in and kill everybody in the village.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what when you and I were talking, it brings memories to mind, but like, you know, with the Secret Service, I would work with foreign militaries and foreign law enforcement for visits and overseas or in the United States. And you start to get a feel for the different expectations. And what I mean by that, like Israel and United Kingdom, most of their, not necessarily local law enforcement, but their version of the Secret Service, all of those guys served in the military in one capacity or another. And I believe, and I could be wrong and I could be fact checked, but in Israel, like you have to have actually seen combat, which for them probably is easier than some other countries because they're always fighting in order to guard whoever the leader is. In the United Kingdom, it's the same thing. They're usually commander or commandos and they're in MI5 and they're the ones that are doing protection. Yeah. But then you go to like Vietnam or Africa or South America, and basically their Secret Service and a lot of their police changes with each regime change because the leaders are so concerned that if they get elected and it's the old leaders' guards or law enforcement, they'll just be overthrown or mutinied. So they usually fire them all and in some cases execute them. And it's amazing to see, and also what they deem as a show of force. And I'll give two examples and then we'll move on. But in Vietnam, I was there with Trump during the APEC, and beautiful. I had a great time, and it was very interesting. And I've talked about the experience a few times, but basically anywhere you went, the streets were lined with. It's hard to explain because they all looked like military, but this was their law enforcement. But maybe every mile was some 18, 19-year-old kid. I'm just going to say that because I don't want to think that they're 14, but they looked very young to me with an AK, and they were just standing every mile for 30, 40 miles. And then you would see their military version. They were usually in some sort of black garb, and they were riding around and they would check on them. And the way that they would do things was very different than how you would see in the U.S. I remember me and some of the guys were, out and we were doing some shopping, whatever, and a black uniform and like a peach uniform. I can't really know what it was, but they stopped a kid on a scooter. He had a girl on the back. They said something, yelled at him. He got off the scooter. The cop gets on the scooter, and then they all drive away. And I'm like, did they just jack that guy's scooter? Like, what the fuck is going on? And the kid just kind of throws his hands up, and they start walking somewhere else. Yeah, and it's different. And then you fast forward to I did when Harris did her swing through Ghana, Zambia, and Tanzania, and I think we were in Ghana, and similar setup. We're driving. I mean, I think we had like a 20-mile motorcade, and it's like every mile or so there was somebody in a black shirt, black BDU pants that said police on it. That's all it said. And I asked the driver, I was like, is this all your police? And he looked at me like I felt like he didn't want to tell me. I was like, no, man, it's okay. He goes, they put out an advertisement 2 weeks ago. He goes, they paid all these people like $20 to stand there with those shirts on and active law to have like, hey, look how big our law enforcement is. He goes, they're not cops.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me one bit, man. It's just it's funny, and
Yeah. Well, and the pay disparity too, because I know and I'm one of them. I've bitched about law enforcement pay for a very long time, but I was talking to the drivers in Africa. They were getting $2 US a day to work 12-hour days, and then I think I was in Honduras. I can't remember. I think it was in Honduras. Spence was down there, and their Secret Service. That's where I learned about. They switched with every regime change, and we were using a translator app. He was trying to ask me how much money I made. And I was just like, well, how much money do you make? And he was showing me, he was like very proud. He's like, I make $700 a month. This is like very good, very high for this country. I said, oh yeah, it's same. And I'm like 700 a month.
Yeah.
And like those dudes are like putting themselves on the line every day.
Yeah, so I did 6 months in Central America. I was an officer in charge of a security training team. So we had like teams out there training like the military, like Honduras, El Salvador,
Yeah.
Guatemala, Belize, and we went to Costa Rica. They don't have a military; they have a national police force. But I remember I'm in El Salvador and the El Salvadoran Marines, and I mean these guys, they literally are hooking and jabbing every day.
Yeah.
And there's like these really strict laws. They were like asking, can we get bandages or can we get some magazine pouches? Like I felt so bad we couldn't give them anything. And then I remember these two guys, and this guy was an older guy. He'd been in Iraq with El Salvador, because I remember I was there when not when he was there, but I remember seeing El Salvadorian military, and he'd been their version of the Marine Corps. And I mean, and they have no money, these guys, but these guys, like, they're professional. They got into the two of them. They got into a gunfight with like a squad size element of like, they call like MS-13 and everything terrorists down there, but like it was probably like MS-13 or something.
Yeah.
And it was just two of them, and they killed a bunch of them, then captured the rest of them. And I'm like, oh, what'd you do? He goes, well, so and so here got down, laid down a base of fire. Then I maneuvered up on the side of them. I'm like, where'd you learn that? He goes, from the Marine Corps. You guys. And I was like,
Yeah.
yes. But these guys, like, people don't get it, man. Like, like, yeah. I mean, you got a right in the States to bitch about pay, but like these guys, when I was down there, like this was 2017, 2018, like El Salvador wasn't as safe as it is now. And these guys were out there fighting. Like they were literally getting into gunfights almost daily. They had fucking M4s, probably from that we gave them in the 80s, and still using our weapons, like especially in the Marine Corps, like, oh, this needs to be LTI and PFI, like changed. The barrel it's gone through a number of rounds. We need to change it out, or, demill it and stuff, because not them. They just keep using everything, man.
Yeah. They say, fuck it. And listen, I'm still going to bitch about law enforcement pay, but
absolutely.
But you remind me of something else. So while we were in Honduras, we got there a day early and we had our day of downtime. So usually when you land, this is when I was with the Secret Service, you go out, you explore, whatever it is. A lot of people like to go to the embassy to see stuff or go get food, whatever. You try to experience wherever you're at. And so we all kind of went out, and I immediately felt like this isn't safe, because you're looking at like Wendy's, and that was the other thing. There wasn't really any local restaurants or shops or anything like that. It was like Wendy's, Walmart, McDonald's. Like it was very corporate America stuff that was there. And every single like Chili's, they all had some sort of version of an armed guard with a shotgun or an AK-47 guarding it. And you're like, this doesn't feel good. And we made it to the embassy, and then when we get there, the booth had a couple bullet holes in there. And the embassy, the Marine stood up and he goes, what are you guys doing here? We're like, hey, we just come. They're like, bro, you should not be here. Like, did you walk here? Don't do that. And he was like freaking out a little bit. And I was like, dude, he's like, yeah, get inside. Come on, get inside. And he's trying to explain to us, like, this is not safe. So fast forward to the next day, we're doing our briefing, and the RSO, the security officer, he basically goes, do not leave the compound. Last night we had a local citizen, he got shot in the Chili's, which some people had actually gone to just because they were trying to get some food or whatever. He's like, your life is worth $50. That cell phone that you have in your pocket is worth half a year's salary. They will kill you and rob you just for that cell phone. No questions asked. And we're like, Jesus, you should have told us this when we got off the fucking plane, bro.
Yeah.
Like, no, we had no idea.
Like, I mean, this is the thing when I try and tell people, like, there is a wealth gap in the United States, but like, bro, you go to other countries and people like that are like broke here, like they can still go to Starbucks and get a coffee. People that are broke down there, they're like looking for money to get food, and you saw that, like,
oh, dude, yeah.
So,
yeah, they're bitching about money and they're talking on their iPhone while they're drinking their Starbucks, going, I don't get paid enough. And I'm like, dude, you have no fucking clue.
Yeah, I mean, come on, dude.
Sorry, go ahead. I interrupted you.
No. I was going to say, like, I know one of the things you wanted to talk about, like one of the weird things is like that, like when I left active duty, I didn't realize, like we were talking before we started, like,
then you went into law enforcement. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just the change. Like, dude, you could be coming out of the military. You could be high speed operator, fucking pilot. Flying a $45 million jet, and you get a job, and then like in the civilian way, and in law enforcement, and this, like no one gives a shit. Like you were a cop, and so I remember when I became a local cop, I was like, I wasn't expecting like different treatment, but I was expecting like, okay, I've been a federal law enforcement. I know I wasn't a uniform cop, but I've been, federal agent. I stood next to Bush, Condoleezza Rice, Cheney, all these bigwigs with a loaded weapon.
Yeah.
Guarded them, made sure their arrivals, and and then I was in the Marine Corps. Top secret clearance, and
Yeah.
led America's youth in combat and was in charge of millions of dollars of equipment and stuff. You become a local cop, and this, dude. Like, then all of a sudden you're like, you're treated like a fucking 19-year-old idiot. Like, you're like, it was just like, I'm like, and I like, listen, man, I always admit it, like, if I didn't know something, like, oh, I don't know how to do this. I remember like being in field training. I'm like, yeah, can we go over this again? Because I'm not sure. I want to make sure I know how to do this.
Yeah.
And I remember I had this one guy, because I became a cop. I got hired as a cop at 34 and like got on the road at 35, like after the academy and field training. And there was this guy there, and I fucking hate to this day. I fucking can't stand him. He's long retired. He's a piece of shit. I said, I always wish he got the cancer that my daughter got and he died from it.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, I just hate the guy. But I remember he was like, was making a joke. Oh, you're the 35-year-old rookie. Like,
oh my God.
Yeah. And the guy that was training me was like, what are you doing, dude? Like, I'm trying to field train him, and then like, it was that, like, dude, you go to like, and it's everywhere, but like, you go, how it is with like local cops. Like, some of them are such like, they think because they went from their parents' basement to being a cop, because like in Jersey, bro, not as much now, but it used to be, you had like, it was like you had to have a hook to get hired.
Yeah.
And like, oh, because yeah, okay. Like, and I'm not taking it away. Like, a lot of the guys did stuff. I'm not saying like shootings and stuff, but like CPR calls and stuff like that, bad accidents. Like, okay, but like, it's not like I was expecting to be like, oh, you've been like, I'm like, just like, I've been around the block, bro. Like,
yeah,
like, I've done stuff, and it's like, you don't have to treat me like I'm like a fucking 5-year-old kid.
Yeah.
And you got that. Like, and like I said, like, I like, dude, I'm not sure. Can we go over this domestic violence paperwork again? Because like, I wasn't sure, and I had no problem. I would be like, hey, can you help me out with this? I got to do this complaint. I only did one of these before. And some guys would like, yeah. And, when I became a detective there, I would like some guys would want to try and work their cases, like a fraud case or something. I'm like, hey, listen, dude, I'll help you out. You're going to nights in the next week. I'll do the subpoenas for you. But some guys didn't want to help out. Like local law enforcement's weird, where it's like, and I'm not sure if you saw this, where like guys want to see, it's almost like they want to see you fail. Like,
oh yeah.
Yeah. It's like, dude, we're all on the same team. Like, I mean, I left never getting promoted. I was a detective. It was like a lateral move for me. I liked doing that. But like, some guys are like, oh, you're trying to get promoted. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, no, I'm like, I remember I'd be like, because I was a firearms instructor, and I'm like, oh, I would say to like a couple guys, I'm like, you should go like, oh, why? So someone can get promoted. I'm like, no. So we have more firearms instructors to train you guys how to fucking shoot. Because some of you, and
some of you scare me that you have a gun in your fucking hip.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Dude, I told you. I think I told you this story. I got in trouble for that one time. So
yeah.
We made a complaint at firearms training. I'm like, I was telling about one of my buddies from Central America is San Jose cop, great fucking Marine, great guy. And they had an active shooter a few years ago, and he was one of the first responding, before SWAT got there. And I brought that up at training. I'm like, hey, listen. And, listen, I guess coming from the Marine Corps, I was like, being, and plus you're like guy, like everybody thinks like, oh, you're a Marine, this and that. Like, okay, I can be blunt with you. I'm like, hey, listen, I've seen some of you shoot and you suck. I literally said that. And the one of the people made a complaint, and my buddy was trying to like, it was like, no, Adam, you know, he was trying to like, because he knew that person was going to make a complaint.
Yeah.
And I always said, I say, hey, listen, man, if you guys want to shoot, I'll take time. I'll go on my own time. And you know, some guys there took advantage. Like one guy was having trouble qualing, and I helped him out. I'm like, dude, if someone says, hey, I need help with something, I don't understand why it was like, why are we going to chastise somebody for it?
Yeah.
Like, you know, and I remember my buddy was like that, and he even said, he goes, hey, man, I was having trouble qualing. Adam took time with me. He'll work with you, but people didn't care, man. I'm like, you know, and I tried to explain. I said, hey, I never shot at anybody with a handgun, but I've been in a couple gun battles, and like, you know, like
I'm still here.
I'm still here, and you know, and you know, man, like, you know, it's like, dude, like, okay, you get your shots really good, but like, dude, it's still like you got to reload that weapon. What if it goes down? And some of them were like,
Mm-hmm.
And you know, we didn't have facing targets. You know, it's always it's always a
Stagnant.
nightmare. Yeah, it's always a nightmare trying to find a place where you can train. And you know, most pistol qualification courses have times. And I remember one time I enforced the times when I was running the range, and like half the people failed. I'm like, well, you guys got to work on it then. Like, and, you know, I'm like, you know.
Yeah. I'm going to go on a little diatribe because you hit on a couple things, but local law enforcement where they want to see you fail. And definitely I had a couple deputies at Hillsborough County straight up stepped on my neck and, you know, stabbed me in the back so that they would look better. And unfortunately for one of them, it worked. He's now a fucking lieutenant. I'll never forgive that fucker, but I understand what you're saying. And then military to law enforcement, you brought to mind, I don't know if I've shared the story before, but when I went through FLETC the first time for Secret Service, we were doing active shooter building clearing. And there was two guys that were, you know, hot shit, in my opinion. I always get in trouble because I'm like special forces. I don't know if they were Green Berets or Navy SEAL or whatever the fuck they were. They were operators, something. And they went through, and the exercise was like, there's multiple shooters. So they shot at, these are all sim rounds. They shot the one shooter, and they're like, hey, there's still shooting going on. You got to move on. The purpose of the exercise was somebody has to stay back, and you got to like call it in and bring it back up. These two guys didn't do that. They fucking turn around, 2 shots to the dude's chest, and they kept moving. They're like, whoa. They could time. They're like, you can't execute him. He's like, well, I'm not going to leave this guy behind me. They're like, no. And they're trying to explain the purpose. And the look on their faces, I understood, but we were all laughing because it's like, yeah, what you're saying makes perfect fucking sense to anybody that's standing here before you. But in law enforcement, you can't just execute people. It's like, hey, that guy's down. You handcuff him. You call him back up. I get it. But he's like, but there's somebody killing people. And he's like, anyway, it was an exercise, and I get it.
You know that, like, it's like when a cop gets in shooting and they're like, well, why'd they shoot him 6 times? Like, okay, because a lot of times when people are in a heightened state like that, like the person coming at you, 1 round isn't, unless you get them like right in the heart or shatter a bone, like they're still going to move. And, you know, people don't get like, all right, listen, that person chose to like, now this never happened to me as a cop, but like, I'm just like, that person chose to use violence against me and to make sure that I don't get home to my wife. Like, sorry, that's not how it works. That person's not coming. Well,
correct. And I've had these conversations with people that they say civilian, but no, not military, not law enforcement. They're trying to understand why they have to shoot him, 12 times or whatever. Like, they shot him, he's down. I'm like, again, I've never shot anybody. I've never been in a shooting. I've been shot at, but I did not shoot anybody. But you talk to people who have, and they're like, look, dude, I put 9 rounds in a dude's chest, and he still was able to pick up a gun and keep firing at me. Not for long, but he's like, the number of rounds doesn't mean anything. If you put 1 round right in their fucking brain, sure, that might take them out, but just shooting them, anyway, you're taking them out of the fight. So again, this is just a lapse in knowledge, but you touched on something else that we talked about during our instructor training. I will never understand why agencies and all across the board, it's like this, oh, we have 2 firearm instructors. That's all we need. It's like, why can't every fucking person in this agency who wants to be firearms instructor at least trained go to the train. Like, what is the harm in saying, hey, 90% of my personnel are trained to the level of, who gives a fuck? Like, that should be a good thing.
Yeah.
And they just have this block in their head, and I don't understand why.
You know what it is? It's the keeper of the, what is it? The keeper of the badge or whatever. Like, not like the law enforcement badge. Like, oh, you know, when I went through this course, it was so fucking hard, and now I'm not going to let you go through it and such. You know, and you know, it's like, dude, like my buddy Matt Danner, bro, awesome Marine, and I remember one of the things, and he's a fucking legit fucking badass, man. And I remember him saying one time, he's like, why are we failing people in Marine Corps schools? We should be making sure people pass as much as possible. Like, it's like, you know, people like have this like keeper, like, oh, like, dude, just because like, oh, you failed, like your attrition rate is 60%. Like, okay, maybe you guys aren't training enough. Maybe you're not instructing it the proper way. You know, I can understand if it's like, okay, there's a physical standard, or, you know, like there like maybe a shooting standard, because I know like the force recon units, like when they would do their workups and stuff, they would have like a qual in the beginning and a qual in the afternoon. Like, if you messed up like two quals or something, I think you would be kicked out. I never was force or recon, but I know that like they were strict with that shit. But like, that's like not putting on like, okay, we're gonna haze Tyler and Adam till they quit, you know, or we're gonna fail them because they couldn't run sub 18 3 miles, even though they you know, they're the best at putting this widget together, you know. But, you know, going back to where I was talking about with the shooting, where like people expect like, and you saw that, like people expect you to be like, well, that person's in emotional distress. They're coming out with you with a knife, so you should be stabbed and not go home to your family just so we can get them care. Like, no, dude. I'm going home. That person's, they made that choice. They're not. But I saw that a lot, and I bet you, I'm not sure if you did, probably with like law enforcement, like where people thought like that you were there to be 24/7, be there. Like, they're like, well, I came in last night, or I came in yesterday. You weren't here. Like, well, that was my day off. Like, you know, I just came off nights, and, you know, like I remember, I remember the story. I was in the detective bureau, and I was one of the evidence officers, and this lady called up. It was a Friday in the summer. It was like 3:30, and she wanted to get her son lost his phone, and they had it in the evidence. I'm like, you know, ma'am, I get off at 4. I can stick around to like 4:15 and sign. She's like, oh no, can you stay to 6? I'm like, no, I can't. She's like, well, that's why I can't. I'm like, well, I can come first thing in the morning at like 8 o'clock tomorrow. And it was a Saturday. She's like, no, I can't come. I'm like, she's like, why can't you just stay there and wait for me? I'm like, I go, because I have a wife and daughter, and I want to go home and see them. It's not my problem that your son lost his phone. Now,
correct.
There's consequences for that. Like, now he's got to wait to get it. Like, so, you know,
it is what it is.
Yeah.
Well, it again, so you brought something up. Actually, I haven't thought about it this way, but you made a fucking great point. Why law enforcement and military, I think both, it's almost like they take pride in failing people. They're like, oh, you know, only 20 people passed and all this. It's like, especially right now, there's so few people who even want to do the fucking job. Number one. Number two, and again, I'm towing the line here. I'm not saying, hey, they have some, you know, moral or ethical issue. Like they've done some fucked up shit. They probably shouldn't be in charge. I get all that, but it's like you're going out of your way to, you know, fail people out, kick them out, whether it's physical fitness, which I do believe in, but I'm really touching on, there was a polygrapher for the Secret Service. He would get a fucking boner because he's like, I fail 60% in all my polygraphs. Nobody goes unscathed, and they're like 4 to 8 hours long. And I'm like, dude, why? What the fuck is wrong with you?
Like,
it's like, what are you doing?
Let's put you back on the box and see how you do.
Yeah, no, you fucking go stand post for 12 fucking hours because you wanted to fail this kid because he smoked weed 7 times instead of 5 times. Or it was inane shit that he was fucking failing people for. And I'm like, you're a fucking asshole. That's a good point, man. But listen, we got like 10 minutes. I want to just finish with a couple things. I definitely think I'm going to have you back on maybe 1 or 2 more times. I have a lot more questions.
Give me 1 sec. I got to hit the head really quick.
No, go hit the head, bro. Go hit that.
I'll be right back.
Yep. We're back. A little quick head hit. I also just want to shout out Adam as a fellow bidet. Appreciates the bidet as any gentleman does.
Oh, absolutely.
Most people don't even know, or they don't care. They think it's weird. I'm like, huge fan. So I was happy to see you are as well. Might be from your time in Okinawa.
No, it's from memory. I grew up my mother's from Italy. So
right.
when I used to go see my grandparents, they always had one. So I mean, I can't put like the standalone bidet, but I have the one that plugs in with the heated seat and the warm.
Yeah.
Listen, I'm all about having a nice, comfortable.
As you should.
Yeah.
My experience was in Japan, and ever since then, I've been a huge fan. But we got about 10 minutes, and I just wanted to finish up. You kind of touched on it already, but I'd like to wrap up with the expanse of your career, the experiences you've had, the loss that you've incurred. How do you maintain your physical health, your mental health, and your family?
So it's funny because, I told you my dad was the doctor, and my dad always drilled into us to take care of ourselves. Of course, he doesn't listen to it one bit, but I've always if I need to go to the doctor, I go to the doctor. And then you get drilled into it from the military. If you need help, seek help. And I did a lot of preemptive stuff, like going to the VA, just talking to somebody. And I think part of it is my wife and I get along really well. I mean, there's times I think she wants to push, I got to be careful by an open window. She may try and push me out, but that's a big thing. And, taking care, you're big PT, or when you look good, you feel good, and then you do something about it, so you just take care of yourself. About my daughter,
Mm-hmm.
I guess we could, my daughter passed away in April. It'll be 2 years from cancer. She was 9. And, that's a devastating loss.
Yeah.
It's the worst in the world. But my wife and I, we go to therapy, and we each speak to our own grief therapist, and that helps. And it's like, dude, being you let me talk about it. It's things like that, bro. Just look, we've known each other for, a short time, but you let me talk about it. And, and it's stuff like that helps out. It's, I got good friends, you real when something like that, a traumatic event like that happens, it's weird how some people I know it affected other people, but the way they act towards us, it's okay, listen, I know that Lucy's passing affected you, but it was Jamie and I's daughter. It's fucking horrible. And now why are you being so weird to us, or making her fucking life different?
Yeah.
And then, my wife, the three of us were super, super close. My wife and I were close from the get-go. It's funny, but she's always like, I want to be best friends and everything like that. And then I would be like, well, let's go look at chicks in a bar. She's like, no. I'm like, that's what best friends do.
Yeah, exactly.
She'd be like,
yeah, we're not best friends. You're my wife.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, look at that girl boobs, man. They're awesome. But, I think it's and the same, man. It's just like doing this, you giving me a chance to come on here and talk is therapeutic, and just talking to people. And, I go back to it, and it's what am I going to do? I tell people, what am I going to do? When my daughter was sick and, after she died, what do my wife and I do? Just going to sit in a corner and cry and mope? And no, my daughter would come back and haunt us and yell at us and just be don't again, it's just, it's listen, dude, a lot of people can beat the shit out of me easily, but it's simple. It's don't be a fucking bitch, dude.
It's
really,
true.
That's really it. It's don't be a fucking bitch. No one said you can't cry or you can't be sad. Yeah, you can, but don't be I'm just going to sit home and eat Doritos for the next 6 months and oh, now I'm fat and no one's helping. Dude, a lot of it is yourself. You have to help yourself. And, because when our daughter was sick, it was just me and my wife basically, because her mother at the time had pancreatic cancer and they live 4 hours away. So she was going through treatment. My dad has, he doesn't walk that great anymore. And so they came over, but not that much. was just me and my wife, man.
No.
Going to and that's how we did it. That's really how you do it. I had that, like, guys are like, oh, let's go out after work. I'm like, no, I just want to go home and see my wife and daughter, bro. I don't really give a shit about going out to the bar or catching a game. I sucked at sports, so I'll be the first to admit it. And I never was a sports fan. Like, I mean, I think like a girl, if I were to play like against a 8th grade girls basketball team, they'd probably school me,
Fair enough.
Yeah. I mean, that's like, I'm admitting it. Like, that's part of it. Like, your limitations. That's also part of the thing. Like being I don't try and be anything. And like, and I see that with you, man. It's like, remember when we were practicing before we were going to firearms instructor?
Yeah.
And I'm like, fuck, dude, what do you need to practice? Your fucking shooting is tight. Now I'm like, now I got to practice. And I remember, I'm like, now I got to practice more so I can just keep up with you. And but it was like an awesome, friendly competition. Like, we were like keeping each other up. Like, we're like, yeah, like, good.
Yeah.
And like, we like when the course we just went to, bro, we had a really good course. Like, we had guys that everybody got along. No one was like, oh, I'm a better shot than you. You suck and stuff like that. Like, no, everybody was like, dude, good shooting, man. Nice. Good. Like, there, it's not like, dude, if that was a bunch of like, if we went through that, like with local cops to be like, oh, you suck, dude,
Yeah.
If you didn't make it through training, they'd be like, oh, you fucking stupid. It's like,
Yeah, it wasn't like that.
Yeah, I'm actually like, there's a kid that I was a cop with. He went to the Jersey firearms course and didn't pass it. So I'm going to work with him this week. I'm like, oh, dude, I'll help you out with it.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. Anybody who wants to do it should be allowed. But I just want to touch on this before we go. But, a lot of people think of cops and especially Marines, my God, as these, male or female, to be honest with you, as these super like aggro, aggressive, robot type people. And the older I thought that for a very long time, not to say that my parents were, but they were Marines at the time when I was a kid growing up. And now they're older and I see my dad, he's much more emotional. My mom's more empathetic. And, it was kind of weird for me when it started happening. I don't know, about 10 years ago, maybe. And I realized that I was imitating them growing up and going through law enforcement. And I kept a lot of things boxed in. And well, my buddy BJ was probably the first person to be like, no, dude, I've been going to therapy since I was like 18. And he goes, I've had the same therapist. And he just openly talked about it, completely comfortable.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And you are probably the second guy to actively talk about the pain, the trauma that you've experienced, but also you're still, very, like you said, you're still upbeat. You take care of yourself. You worked out, fitness. You openly talk about going to therapy, multiple different therapists for different things. And you talk about it so freely and naturally. I don't think you understand how rare that is, especially in the world that we're both in. And because when we're sitting there at the table during the show, you're just openly talking about this stuff. I don't know if you realize or not. Maybe if you do, you didn't show it, but guys were just like, they kind of were like, oh, it almost was like you hit them. They're like, oh, that's so okay. He's just talking about it like it's nothing. And I'm like, no, this is huge because we all have shit. And usually it takes time to get to know people and you hear their stories and you're like, man, I hope you're taking care of yourself or I hope you're talking to somebody. But a lot of times they won't because they're scared to do it. And here you are just like, no, man, my shit's fucked up. I don't know how to talk about it. So I need to talk to somebody. And yeah, I got to work out. I'm getting older. I got to take care of my body. You should be eating that shit. And Tyler, why are you eating five rolls, even though they're delicious? You fat fuck.
I never called you.
You never did. But what I'm saying is you understand those things that are important. And people think I'm a fucking psycho because I consume podcasts and books and stuff on sleep, diet, nutrition. My kids are fucking sick of it because I'm always like, you need to drink water. You need to be eating these. You need to take these supplements.
That's your therapy. You're taking care of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It's great. And unfortunately, like, and this with like, especially in law enforcement, it's like, I always dreaded, like, if I got into an OIS, an officer involved shooting, I know they would have like dragged me through the mud with like, oh, you go to the VA and this and that. I'm like, I don't know by you, but there's always a stigma free zone. I'm like, that's such bullshit, dude.
Yep.
Like, you know that, like, God forbid, like the first, like, if I could have been, or you could have been, like, I'm just using me, I could have been in a completely justified shooting, and I would have been doxxed and dragged through the mud, and oh, you know,
Yeah.
even though, like, like somebody would say, well, the guy would, like, just hacked up 6 people and he got in there and saved like 10 other people, and
Yeah.
well, the guy was in mental distress, and that cop is aggressive, and he probably beats his wife and blah blah blah. Like, that's the shit, like, So
Yeah. No, very true. Well, I'm definitely gonna have you on, bro, because there's a lot more questions. I took copious notes, so I hope you're ready. But anything you want to leave with, brother, I appreciate your time.
No, man, I'm so honored that you let me do this, and this, it's fucking awesome. Now I still got to listen to the other Street Tales podcast. I'm not gonna lie, I've been lazy with that, but, like,
No, it's all right, man.
yeah,
There's a lot on there.
yeah, I can't wait, bro. All right,
All right, brother, I appreciate it.
yeah, all right, man. Be safe, and I'll talk to you later. All right,
Sounds good, brother. I'll talk to you.
all right.